Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about capitalism. Yeah, Mr. Green, capitalism just turns men into wolves. Your purportedly free markets only make slaves of us all. Oh God, Stan, it's me from college. Me from the past has become me from college. This is a disaster. The reason he's so unbearable, Stan, is that he refuses to recognize the legitimacy of other people's narratives, and that means that he will never, ever be able to have a productive conversation with another human in his entire life. So listen, me from the past, I'm going to disappoint you by being too capitalist, and I'm going to disappoint a lot of other people by not being capitalist enough, and I'm going to disappoint the historians by not using enough jargon. But what can I do? We only have 12 minutes. Fortunately, capitalism is all about efficiency, so let's do this, me from college. Randy Riggs becomes a best-selling author, Josh Radnor stars in a great sitcom, it is not going to work out with Emily, and do not go to Alaska with a girl you've known for 10 days. Okay, let's talk capitalism. So capitalism is an economic system, but it's also a cultural system. It's characterized by innovation and investment to increase wealth. But today we're going to focus on production and how industrial capitalism changed it. Stan, I can't wear these emblems of the bourgeoisie while Karl Marx himself is looking at me. It's ridiculous. I'm changing. Very hard to take off a shirt dramatically. So let's say it's 1200 CE and you're a rug merchant. Just like merchants today, you sometimes need to borrow money in order to buy the rugs you want to resell at a profit, and then you pay that money back, often with interest, once you've resold the rugs. This is called mercantile capitalism, and it was a global phenomenon, from the Chinese to the Indian Ocean Trade Network to Muslim merchants who would sponsor trade caravans across the Sahara. But by the 17th century, merchants in the Netherlands and in Britain had expanded upon this idea to create joint stock companies. Those companies could finance bigger trade missions and also spread the risk of international trade. But the thing about international trade is sometimes boats sink or they get taken by pirates, and while that's bad if you're a sailor because, you know, you lose your life, it's really bad if you're a mercantile capitalist because you lost all your money. But if you own 1/10 of 10 boats, your risk is much better managed. That kind of investment definitely increased wealth, but it only affected a sliver of the population, and it didn't create a culture of capitalism. Industrial capitalism was something altogether different, both in scale and in practice. Let's use Joyce Appleby's definition of industrial capitalism: an economic system that relies on investment of capital in machines and technology that are used to increase production of marketable goods. So imagine that someone made a Stan machine. By the way, Stan, this is a remarkable likeness. And that Stan machine could produce and direct 10 times more episodes of Crash Course than a human Stan. Well, of course, even if there are significant upfront costs, I'm going to invest in a Stan machine so I can start cranking out 10 times the knowledge. Stan, are you focusing on the robot instead of me? I am the star of the show! Stan, but you're going behind the globe. So when most of us think about capitalism, especially when we think about its downsides, long hours, low wages, miserable working conditions, child labor, unemployed Stans, that's what we're thinking about. Now, admittedly, this is just one definition of industrial capitalism among many, but it's the definition we're going with. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. Industrial capitalism developed first in Britain in the 19th century. Britain had a bunch of advantages. It was the dominant power on the seas, and it was making good money off of trade with its colonies, including the slave trade. Also, the growth of capitalism was helped by the half-century of civil unrest that resulted from the 17th century English Civil War. Now, I'm not advocating for civil wars or anything, but in this particular case, it was useful because before the war, the British Crown had put a lot of regulations on the economy, complicated licenses, royal monopolies, etc. But during the turmoil, it couldn't enforce them, which made for freer markets. Another factor was a remarkable increase in agricultural productivity in the 16th century. As food prices started to rise, it became profitable for farmers, both large and small, to invest in agricultural technologies that would improve crop yields. Those higher prices for grain probably resulted from population growth, which in turn was encouraged by increased production of food crops. A number of these agricultural improvements came from the Dutch, who had chronic problems feeding themselves and discovered that planting different kinds of crops, like clover that added nitrogen to the soil and could be used to feed livestock at the same time, meant that more fields could be used at once. This increased productivity eventually brought down prices, and this encouraged further innovation in order to increase yield to make up for the drop in prices. Lower food prices had an added benefit. Since food cost less and wages in England remained high, workers would have more disposable income, which meant that if there were consumer goods available, they would be consumed, which incentivized people to make consumer goods more efficiently and therefore